I feel hungry after watching that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Curtis. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Broadcast. And Nina Hussain has been called back to ITN, so I've been called up from the subs bench to chair the final interview of the day. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, whose CV is a roll call of the industry's biggest and toughest jobs. He's been controller of BBC One, chief executive of Channel 4, chairman of the BBC Board of Governors, and executive chairman of ITV, before making a poacher-turned-gamekeeper move when he became chairman of Ofcom in May this year. This is his first public speech since taking that role, so please join me in welcoming Lord Grade.
I wasn't sure how long the applause would last, so I anticipated it. I'm dying to meet Baz Luhrmann and tell him that I did actually meet Elvis. True. Good afternoon, good evening. Today's strapline, the fight for attention. So in a bid for yours, I'm going to make a shocking admission that I used to hate regulators. My antipathy stemmed from that long-gone patrician age of broadcasting regulation when, believe it or not, the Independent Broadcasting Authority was the publisher in law of everything we transmitted on ITV. That was a last hangover from establishment control of the arts and information. The low point came at a meeting, it was the low point for me, at a meeting chaired by Lady Plowden, the IBA's patrician-in-chief. And the assembled top brass of 15 ITV companies sat aghast as she demanded that Crossroads, the UK's most popular soap, be removed from the schedules. It occupied the top 5 rating slots in the top 20 every week, but it was not a show that the members of the great and the good could be proud of at their dinner soirees. The late Lord Windlesham, MD of the producing company Central Television, pressed her for the reasoning of the authority. Eventually, she conceded, and I quote verbatim, "The authority finds it distressingly popular." Well, just as technology has moved us on exponentially, I'm happy to report that broadcasting regulation has also moved with the times. So I'm proud and privileged to speak to you now as the chair of Ofcom, an important moment in its history. Right now, Ofcom is gearing up for a huge challenge under the government's online safety bill, among the first laws of their kind in the world. We will be given new powers to hold some of the world's biggest and most powerful tech companies to account. Our research shows people are increasingly concerned about harmful online content, both for themselves and particularly for their children. There is an urgent need for sensible, balanced rules that protect users from serious harm. And these plans have not been without their critics in Parliament and elsewhere. Some say Ofcom can't have an impact, that a regulator in the UK cannot change the behavior of global tech giants, or that the sheer volume of online content harm is just too great to tackle. Others say the bill will have too much impact by stifling freedom of expression. Let me respond, starting with free speech. After all, that is the heartbeat of the internet, and at Ofcom, they have 20 years' experience of preserving it across broadcasting. Last year, we assessed more than 11,000 pieces of TV and radio content. And after taking account of freedom of expression, we found only 29 in breach of our rules. Often those were very serious matters, such as hate speech or incitement to murder. So Ofcom is not a regulator that intervenes in legitimate debate. What about the volume of harm? Well, clearly we must be realistic. It would be impossible to attempt to assess online content as we do in TV and radio. In the few minutes that I've been speaking, around 3,000 hours of video have been uploaded to YouTube alone. And even if we could regulate every piece of harmful content, we'd only be treating the symptoms of online harm. Parliament correctly wants us to get to the cause by shining a light on the decisions companies take in designing and operating their services. The bill lays the burden on platforms to reduce harm. So we want to shift their mindset. We need a new era of accountability where companies have to prioritize trust and safety on equal terms with clicks and profit. We know that many services do take steps to protect their users, but these initiatives have not been sufficient to restore people's trust and confidence. Big tech firms need to shift their regulatory responsibilities from the public policy departments where they sit today to the frontline staff responsible for designing and operating these services. At the moment, we see the world of online regulation being accepted and well understood by those whose job it is in the tech companies to worry about such things, namely the policy and strategy teams. But like bankers who think their compliance department belong to a galaxy far, far away, those who design and operate the tech platforms are not routinely touched by safety concerns. Under the planned laws, Ofcom will have powers to summon people with the day-to-day responsibility for users' safety on the sites and apps themselves. This represents a very meaningful overdue shift in the regulatory culture of big tech. Now, this won't happen, obviously, overnight. There's no magic switch to be flicked as the bill becomes an act, no miracle cure for the internet's every ill. But I believe the search engines and the social media apps people use today will become safer and safer, and the industry will need to hone a culture of responsibility towards its users. As the current inquest into Molly Russell's tragic death reminds us, this is an urgent task. We're not waiting at Ofcom for royal assent to get ready, and neither should the platforms. Rather, we have spent the last 2 years preparing. Ofcom is hiring expert minds from across the tech industry. We've built on our existing skill base by recruiting talent, for example, from Meta, from Google, and from Amazon, academe, and the policy world. We've established a data innovation unit and a tech hub in Manchester. We've published world-leading research about online harm and how it might be addressed, from risk in algorithm design to the use of AI in content moderation. Just last week, we explored research models for assessing online harm. This autumn, we'll release studies on age protection, risks to children, hashing technology, online terrorism, and hate speech. We are already regulating the video sharing platforms, and we will soon publish an amazing and important forensic analysis that we undertook on the online response to the tragic Buffalo shooting. There are lots of lessons in that work. All that research is helping to form an expert evidence base. It will also help us anticipate change and respond to a fast-moving market. Just think, a couple of Christmases ago, as the government was confirming the online safety plans to Parliament, 2 French entrepreneurs were launching Be Real, or Be Real, I don't know, I'm not sure. As you'll know, this platform lacks the conflict and curation of some other social media, and now it's topped Apple's app chart as part of a cultural shift in how younger people want to use social media. So there are signs that users are tired of the endless pressures of self-presentation. Or maybe, like me, they're concerned by the tone of interaction and debate on social media. Can online communities become more tolerant of diverging views, more open-minded to change? These are bigger questions which surpass the role of any regulator. Yet they affect us all, and the answers may determine the future role of our traditional media sector. I believe the tone of social discourse online reflects the polarization of wider society. What were once civilized, legitimate debates about politics, society, and culture are now escalated and characterized as culture wars. Traditionalists and progressive groups are locked in a seemingly endless struggle to impose their view of the world, their beliefs, their values, their vocabulary. Important but divisive issues from Brexit to COVID restrictions or personal rights have become angry battlefields of bitter division. Now, I've had arguments all my life with politicians when I was in broadcasting, and I must confess to some of them being quite heated. But when these important debates cross the line, when they're conducted with aggression, prejudice, or a tone that borders on the hateful, I think we all lose something. When they are debated instead, yes, with passion, but also with respect and an open mind, we can bring people together and find answers that help us to move forward. I myself have learned in debates in the House of Lords that tone is everything. Politeness gets you a hearing. Angry, intolerant argument gets you nowhere. As Rory Stewart observed in his marvellous recent Radio 4 series, we've lost the art of civilized debate. Why does this matter to Ofcom? Well, here I must be very clear. Ofcom does not and should not regulate the culture wars. Some try to conscript us to their cause, but we're not interested. That's not our job. Whether we're judging that Piers Morgan's comments about the Duchess of Sussex were justified by freedom of expression, or that diversity's tribute to Black Lives Matter movement was too, we never make decisions based on personal preference, political pressure, fear, or favour. Instead, we all leave our various opinions at the door. We focus on the legal framework and the duties given to us by Parliament, and we make careful, balanced decisions based on the evidence. For the same reason, we should not seek to regulate the tone of debate on social media, either now or through our new duties. Nevertheless, I care on a personal level, as I'm sure this audience does too, about the need for tolerant debate. That matters to me not just as a citizen and parliamentarian, but also as somebody who has sought to champion our world-class broadcasting sector. Because broadcasting has a unique ability to provide a fair, accurate, and trustworthy platform for calm, considered differences. Those views are more necessary than ever for a stable society and a strong democracy. So we need due impartiality, but we also need trust. In other words, perceptions of impartiality matter too. And our latest research shows that they could be stronger. Around 6 in 10 trust traditional TV news, a little higher for Sky at 6 in 10. Why aren't all our broadcasters doing even better on this measure? Well, impartiality is a hugely complex area. Ofcom's research shows that many factors influence people's perceptions here, including how strongly they feel about a given issue themselves. We published some illuminating research on impartiality this summer. It was based on BBC content, but the findings are relevant to all. When participants looked at news reports, their impressions of due impartiality were often based on signals around how it was presented, such as the presenter's tone, that word again. We all want television and radio journalists to do what they do best, hold people to account, cross-examine their motives, test their views, and I believe they can do all of this in a measured manner. Of course, broadcasters need to find an audience in their content on social media as well. But in trying to reach younger people who watch 7 times less linear TV than over 65s, clicks might matter more than viewership. But in the fight for attention, traditional broadcasters will never match social media's capacity for the shrill and the shocking, nor should they be trying. Instead, we look to them for calm, forensic analysis and interrogation. The facts then will speak for themselves. Falsity, contradiction, hypocrisy will still be exposed. Viewers and listeners can and will make up their own minds. More than that, audiences may be less inclined to question the motives of the interviewer or the impartiality of the channel. In that way, our broadcasters can strengthen their own reputations while helping to civilize the tone of national debate. I hope this will be taken in the right way as an observation from someone who cares deeply about our broadcasting industry and who spent so many decades in our PSB sector. I do appreciate its values and its value, which brings me to the final question. How should we as a nation best arrange the PSB system to sustain its future over the next decade? Well, before I joined Ofcom, or even thought about applying, I was never shy about expressing views on this. But personal opinions, most especially mine, are not the currency of Ofcom's work. Our role is to provide research and evidence, to adapt our regulation and to inform Parliament about policy options and their potential impact. Some aspects of PSB are currently up for debate. There are long-term questions to answer: BBC funding, Channel 4 ownership, how legislation might level the playing field where PSBs compete with US streamers. But these are matters for government and Parliament. They are not matters for Ofcom. But on one thing we can all agree. The creative industries sector is one of the great British success stories of the last 50 years. Our industry talent, from chippies to grips, screenwriters, designers, makeup, special effects, lighting designers, camera, crew, directors, actors, and all the other that make up a production. They're in demand all over the world, through recession and pandemic. And British viewers and listeners enjoy a rich and varied diet of British-made programmes. As Ofcom found in its review of last year's Small Screen Big Debate, the strength of our traditional broadcasters lies in their ability to do something US platforms often cannot, to appeal to people from all backgrounds, to reach and serve all parts of the UK. Public service broadcasting is the place where culture meets commerce. We must never forget the cultural importance of its heritage. And while the industry has much more to do on diversity, as this conference I think has shown, most particularly I would say behind the camera, I would say that on screen over my career, we have made wonderful progress in representation on screen since I started in broadcasting in 1973. For all these reasons, any proposed changes to the PSB framework must be tested against their potential impact on investment in our creative industries. Quite simply, these achievements have been a triumph of public policy. We must do nothing to put them at risk. I am certain Parliament will have that in mind as it reviews the current arrangements. Policymakers must also learn from history. I hope we all remember the lessons of the Competition Commission's decision in 2009 not to allow PSBs to launch the joint Kangaroo streaming service. It's my view that this myopic misjudgment handed the valuable streaming market to the USA on a regulatory plate. Since then, US streamers have transformed and captured the UK market, and we're playing catch-up. Online platforms are reshaping the way we discover and consume content, providing unprecedented choice, but also making it harder for home content providers to compete. So we've been working with the Competition and Markets Authority on a new code of practice, including some basic rules on the relationship with content providers. The aim is to help ensure the trading relationship between big online platforms and these providers is fair and reasonable. Well, in short, there is work to do, but as ever, I'm an optimist, and I am optimistic about the future. The government has heard our recommendations, and the Media Bill provides the opportunity to define a new future of public service broadcasting. Ofcom will lend clear evidence analysis to the debate, examining the market and using our competition powers to intervene if necessary. And we will keep working with you to secure our industry. On my watch, I hope Ofcom will strive to maintain its reputation above all for political independence, for decisions and judgments based on evidence and research. And we will continue our work to promote growth, competition, innovation and investment, while ensuring that audiences are rewarded. No other country can match the talent, creativity and heritage of our broadcasting sector. And to all of you who work in it or are hoping to work in it, my message is that you can thrive by continuing to focus on your great strengths, making outstanding programs for UK audiences, and bringing calm impartiality to the national debate. In those respects, I don't think we've ever needed you more. So thank you, RTS, for this invitation. Thank you for listening. I just hope I got the tone right. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We are perilously short of time, and it was our ambition to do some Q&A from the floor. We will try and squeeze some in at the end. So if you do have a question, put your thinking cap on, keep it tight. I shall try and follow my own advice. Michael, you talked a lot about the importance of tone, and the implication from your speech, I think, was that on occasion you feel, in some cases, the PSB's, in particular, tone may be letting them down. Are you thinking about particular topics, or are you thinking about things like interviewing style, for example?
I think interviewing style mainly, yes. I've seen examples. I heard one interview, I think, with during the Conservative leadership campaign. Somebody asked Rishi Sunak whether he was slick and rich.
Yeah.
Not quite sure that's appropriate.
So the challenge for broadcasters is to be robust.
Think about tone.
To be robust, to hold politicians to account, but you think that potentially they can come across as being biased or not impartial?
No, it's not about bias. It's about tone. It's about language. Some of the great interviewers don't have to be aggressive or overstate and use emotive language like liar and so on in an interview. We don't need that. We need to understand and we need to test, but we need to get the tone right.
Because those are examples of the shrill and shocking that you mentioned in your speech that potentially do undermine impartiality in your view.
It's not about impartiality. It's about, we live in a very... we have a confrontational society. Our legal system is confrontational. Parliament is confrontational. But there are kind of rules. There are boundaries, and I'd like to see us move much more towards a civilized debate. That's not to say you shouldn't ask the most difficult questions. Absolutely, we must do. But it's the tone in which you do it. I think tone is important.
Very good, thank you. Let's talk Channel 4. You said in your speech that the achievements of the PSB ecosystem are a triumph. Any proposed changes must do nothing to put those achievements at risk and must be tested against their potential impact. Does privatising Channel 4 fall under that description?
People know my personal views pre-Ofcom. This is now entirely a matter for Parliament, for the government and for Parliament. It's not a matter for Ofcom whatsoever. You can argue the Channel 4 case every which way. In the end, it'll be for Parliament to decide. As
an evidence-based regulator, would you say, hypothetically, that determining the outcome, a big policy decision outcome, before launching a consultation was contravening that sort of approach?
I don't follow that, forgive me.
Well, you talk about testing the potential impacts on investment in our creative industries.
Yeah. This is a matter for Parliament.
Privatising Channel 4 presumably would do just that, and so therefore...
Not necessarily.
No?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's for people to take a view on. It's for Channel 4 to make the case. It's for politicians to argue it one way or the other. And the arguments will be tested as the bill, assuming it's coming soon, which I hope it will, because the bill is not just about Channel 4. There's some very, very important issues, which Caroline McCall alluded to earlier, about prominence and so on, which are very, very important. So I hope the bill will come soon. But it's for Parliament to tease these arguments out. That's what Parliament's for.
And you are confident, hopeful, optimistic that a media bill will come, irrespective of whether potentially its showpiece, the centrepiece, the Channel 4 privatisation is part of it or not?
I've heard nothing that says it's been delayed, but we've got a new set of principles in the cabinet, so we'll wait to see. But I don't want people to think this bill is just about Channel 4. Yeah. It's about the whole of PSB, and there's some very important measures in this bill.
Ofcom made some important points around prominence almost 2 years ago now, I think.
Indeed. Also the relationship, also making sure that the PSBs are able to take full advantage of where the audience is, which is on their smartphones, on their tablets, on their computers, and so on.
Absolutely. And what about the general health of the public service broadcasting system at the moment? I mean, did you have any views? We've had the Queen's funeral, obviously, a huge thing, the nation coming together. Did you have any views on how the PSB's handled that?
Judging by the critics, I think there was pretty much universal acclaim for the coverage. The level of complaints at Ofcom, I think we've had about 700 complaints in all. Which compared to, I think, the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral was about 20,000. So I think it's the level of complaints and the nature of the complaints suggests that there was overall satisfaction.
And overall, there are threats, there are powerful competitors for the PSBs now, more powerful, more deep-pocketed competitors than ever before. Your sense of the health of the PSB system, and
I think we can talk the PSB system down very easily. The technology moves very fast. Consumer habits move much more slowly. Yes, there is a fragmentation that's been going on for many years, but looking at the quality, of what British producers are still able to produce, that the broadcasters, the PSBs are commissioning, there's still stuff that doesn't work, but there's a lot of stuff that does, and it's very compelling.
Good. A sign has flashed up on our screen that says, please wrap, no questions. And who am I to undermine the power of the RTS? Michael, thank you for your speech. Thank you for those brief answers. We could have talked for much longer, but we look forward to hearing more from you in your role as chair of Ofcom and the important policy debates that will play out in the future. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.